You're leaving a lot of money on the table.
Don't know the crew, don't like it.
If you change your mind, let me know.
Hey guys, so I've been playing Star Wars Outlaws now for a couple hours with the early access. I purchased a month subscription for Ubisoft Connect. That's what I generally do with Ubisoft games. I definitely don't pay full price for them anymore because they all kind of feel the same, and I usually don't play them for longer than a month anyway. But anyway, going into this Ubisoft game, I was pretty sure I knew what to expect from this game, and as I played more and more of it, it became pretty obvious what this game is and what it's not. And so today I want to give you guys a better idea of whether you should buy this game, get the subscription, or just like sit it out. And I also want to explain what they were thinking when they made this game and who it's for, because that's also very clear to me. So I've been gaming for like close to a quarter century now. Gaming is my passion, I would say, as much as Star Wars is, sometimes even more depending on what's going on in the world. And ever since I've been an adult, I've been cursed and blessed with having enough money to pretty much buy whatever game I want to play. But now time is a much bigger issue. And in the last 5 years or so, honestly, I've become increasingly jaded because it seems like, from a gameplay standpoint, everything has really stagnated. Everything feels the same to me. It's also very much possible that I've just played too many games where I'm growing up, I'm getting older, life. And so when I'm tackling a game like Star Wars Outlaw, immediately everything in this game was reminding me of other games I've played, not only from Ubisoft, but from a wide variety of different franchises. You know, sometimes video games just do something so well that everyone copies them, and there's no need to change that mechanic. And sometimes, you know, people are just, you know, creatively bankrupt, in my opinion. And so with Star Wars Outlaws, when you're playing this game, everything is going to feel pretty familiar. All the basic mechanics and core features are not going to shock or surprise you unless you haven't played games in a while or you're younger and just getting into gaming. In which case I envy you because there's a lot of stuff to play now. Like a lot of the small things like the crawling into the vents immediately gave me Deus Ex Mankind vibes. I spent a lot of time in those vents in that game. The lockpicking is a rhythm-based take on the Bethesda franchise. The hacking into the computers. Actually, a lot of the symbols remind me of the old KOTOR games, kind of. But yeah, it's also just another, like, it's a well-done mechanic, but it's not really that interesting. These are just things you expect to have to do now in games. It feels more like a chore. Then you have Nyx, who's just like any other companion creature. He's really adorable, well-designed, but he basically serves as all the player aids you get in other games. Like you have a sort of Batman Arkham Asylum detective mode thing going on. Nyx also has a lot of different abilities that can help you fetch stuff, hit buttons, distract enemies. I'm reminded of Watch Dogs somewhat, and your phone. Or honestly, even, was it ID10 in Battlefront also had some of these capabilities, I want to say. The parkour and platforming is very light, thank God. I hate platforming. And it's basically Assassin's Creed, but a little less fluid. They're clearly using a different engine here. The combat itself is a blend of stealth and adventure-style shooting, aka not very deep at all. There is some cover mechanics as well that you do need to use. And everything from the animation, controls, and fluidity of the movement is pretty good, what you would expect from a Ubisoft game. The stealth is pretty forgiving, but the enemies are kind of sharp. I would say that their detection abilities are pretty good. But again, the AI is, you know, relatively easy to exploit. It's not glaringly bad or anything like that, which is a big deal for me because there are stealth-only sections which kind of feel on rails, and they take place in kind of more contained parts of the map that feel a little bit more linear. Like, this is an open-world game with a lot of linear instances, is the best way to describe it. And I have to admit here, I don't like stealth games. I'm the kind of guy who plays Hitman as a third-person shooter, which is why I don't play Hitman well at all. It's a me problem. I have no patience. I like blasting people. It's important, I feel like, for you guys to understand what kind of gamer I am, because I have so many biases at this point. So what I don't like, you might enjoy. Stuff like that. The gunplay is pretty quick. It's fast, arcadey. Headshots are definitely the key here. And all in all, it's fine. It's serviceable, and it keeps me entertained. The guns, well, you only have one blaster, basically, that you can upgrade. Is fine. It's serviceable. Running and gunning and switching to melee mode when you're up close is fluid enough to get your heart pumping. You can't just run around, you do have to use cover in this game because you don't have much health, and also the enemies aren't really that bullet spongy, which is nice. So again, the shootouts are quick, fast, and you know there's light tactics and strategy involved. So far in the few hours I've played, I'm still engaged in the shooting. It's not like my favorite, but it's definitely not something that bores me. You can also pick up larger assault blasters like the A300 or sniper rifles, but You fire them until they're dry, and that's it. You can't reload them. And you also have to put them down if you do anything like climbing a ladder, which is kind of stupid. I mean, I really do like games with some basic inventory, some basic weapons, but I'm guessing that's where they skipped out on the budget. You also have a Red Dead Redemption style ability to mark foes and like slow down time and gun them all down immediately. So overall, all the gameplay mechanics are really just a surface level. They don't really get deep, but they are well implemented, and there aren't that many bugs so far when I've played. I've seen some few visual things here and there that were kind of weird, but other than that, everything was pretty smooth. No crashes. There's also very light role-playing elements. You can upgrade your blaster, your speeder, and your ship. You can also get new gear, which gives you some slight bonuses here and there, but just like the gameplay, it's all very light. So if you don't like Star Wars, if you don't care about the lore or the atmosphere of the franchise, and more importantly, you're a hardcore gamer, this is going to be something you need to skip. But here's the thing, for me, despite recognizing the core gameplay loop and the role-playing elements were very uninspired, I actually enjoyed playing this game, surprisingly. What I really like about this game is the atmosphere. I like the art design. The opening city of Canto Bight was always something I was really interested in, even though I didn't like the sequences in the original movie of Canto Bight. The city was always really cool. You know, I've always wanted to go to a casino world. They do a good job of making the under levels of Canto Bight seem very run down. You get a sense that a lot of the people living here are impoverished. There's not a lot of interaction with characters or anything like that, but just the art design overall is really well done. The game engine, which I'm running on a laptop, by the way, I've been on the road for most of the year due to irregularities with my usual spice suppliers. But yeah, the game engine is great. It looks really beautiful. I mean, the lighting, the reflection in the water, the atmosphere, all of this upscaling AI technology is incredible. I'm amazed that I can get a game that looks this good on a laptop and still record it somehow. You know, I'm sorry if the frame rate is a little weird because it is a laptop, but again, the immersion factor here is really great. The sound design is awesome. Sometimes I just find myself standing next to people and listening to their conversations.
You wouldn't believe the junk they just throw away. I found 2 perfectly good converters in the alley behind the club.
You know that's sixth kin territory.
Yeah, well, they chased me out of there. Dropped my credit card too.
Sometimes I'll even just pause the game and glance out at a viewpoint and soak in the scenery, which is only something I usually do in Cyberpunk 2077 or Grand Theft Auto. And so visually, it's clear they put a lot of effort into designing certain levels, cities, maps, and even if the open world is less interactive than other titles that I've seen so far, it doesn't necessarily mean that they feel completely dead, like some Ubisoft games do. In general, though, I'm getting pretty snobbish about my taste in game nowadays. Like, I feel like every game needs at least 3 to 7 years of development. This is a very unpopular opinion, but I feel like when you're making a video game like this, it's a labor of love, and you should work ridiculous hours to complete it. You should be paid and compensated fairly for that, right? You should get a lot of overtime pay, but working excessive hours is the only way you're going to make a video game good. And I say this because I come from like the production background. I was a video editor. I did a lot of camera work, and we didn't like have labor laws basically. And most of us were okay with it to a certain degree because we just worked on these projects we really loved. I would sometimes take projects home and work on them. I would stay late at the office because, you know, I'm not saying that the labor conditions are okay for everyone, but for me, at least as an artist, you know, to make really wonderful stuff for people to enjoy, you have to spend a ridiculous amount of time. I know this is an unpopular opinion, but this is why I also feel like gaming kind of sucks nowadays. Like Ubisoft, they pump these games out, you know, every few years, and they just are not the same level of quality to some of the other games where there are complaints. Like Red Dead Redemption, for instance. For me, what makes Star Wars Outlaws kind of nice, though, is just, again, the Star Wars elements. Like, there are just things that I notice because I'm such a huge Star Wars fan. Like, when I'm breaking into one of the villains' mansions, I'm looking at the bowcaster and repeating blaster rifle he has on display. Something I wouldn't necessarily do in another game because I'm just not into the lore as much. And when it comes to the map design, like I've mentioned before, it's not really that open. I mean, the cities I've seen so far both have a very natural but maze-like design that's very different from the larger sprawled-out cities you'll see in other games, or even like the smaller settlements you see in Starfield. Instead, the level design encourages exploration the same way that Jedi Survivor or Fallen Order encourages you, which again is not a true open world, but more like a maze-like structure that confuses you so that you feel like the area is bigger than you think. There are, of course, open world areas around the cities that I have explored, and again, it's really atmospheric and beautiful. The water, the wind, the random creatures. Not as beautiful or interactive as Red Dead Redemption, but it's more reminiscent of other Ubisoft games like Far Cry and Assassin's Creed. I do have to do more exploring to actually see if there's anything worth doing as far as side quests. Now, I have noticed some small details here and there, though, that I find are kind of nice, that make the open world worth paying attention to a bit more. It's not just the place you travel through to get to your next shootout or story element. Like when I broke into a criminal syndicate base very loudly, I went stealth, but with grenades. After breaking out, I was able to see a group of gang members run towards the base in a panic, talking about some type of attack. And so that kind of stuff is cool.
Faster! They need support!
If this is Crimson Dawn, Gorak will not be pleased.
I was also just wandering around the wilderness when I came up to a gas station, and I ended up feeding a little creature thing, and seconds later I got mobbed by like a pack of them, and so I had to fire a blaster to tell them to get away, and they did scramble away. So it's little things like this that shows us that Ubisoft is learning a little bit, I guess, that they need to put a little bit more work into the kind of the immersion and world building aspects. Then there's this meal I paid 200 credits for. Like, what the hell? I mean, this was cute, but it was also a really just confusing sequence. Where I had to do like quick action kind of stuff. This was a complete waste of my time. I feel like they were going for a Shenmue vibe maybe, but it just this kind of stuff really pisses me off. The Trailblazer ship is pretty cool to explore inside as well. Again, it's not like other video games haven't done this better, like Mass Effect or KOTOR. Actually, those ships that we get to explore had a lot more functions in them. But again, I'm just a Star Wars nerd, and I like seeing how everything is laid out and where the sleeping quarters are, where the living room is. For me, it's just kind of cool to be in the Star Wars galaxy, I guess. I do have to say, I already like this game a lot more than Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order, and that's mainly because I don't like platforming games and puzzle stuff. I'm also not a huge fan of the whole Jedi and lightsaber melee fighting. I like shooters just more. Usually first-person shooters, but cover-based ones like this are okay. I'm not saying that the Cal Kestis games are worse, though. I can see why people objectively would say that those games are better, but I'm just not a fan of the genre. And with Outlaws, you do get more of an exploration aspect, which is a lot more fun. I feel like with Outlaws, you actually feel like you're living in the Star Wars galaxy, whereas in Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order, you're just like running away and doing dungeon dives and stuff like that. So it's like just a completely different vibe here. I also like playing as a criminal without special powers. Like I mentioned before, Kay does feel somewhat underpowered because she only has a blaster, and so she can die pretty quickly in a gunfight. And that does make the gameplay a little more engaging. From a story point of view, I'm naturally engaged because this is Star Wars, and we are witnessing Star Wars from a scoundrel point of view. If you follow this channel, you know that we love seeing what the average individual has to go through in the Star Wars galaxy. The voice acting, the motion cap stuff, by now is pretty top-notch, as are the performances by the voice actors. It's a pretty standard story so far, what I've seen. Again, I'm just enjoying this game like a ride or another Star Wars TV show, and that's basically what this game really is. I think the goal here is definitely not to rewrite the open world genre, and that's what this game basically is. The goal here is definitely not to rewrite the open world genre. They definitely didn't have enough of a budget or time to do that with this game. This is a game that is accessible to even the more casual player. It won't frustrate people. It's not exceedingly hard, and at the same time, it has the bare minimum of gameplay, so that guys like me won't be extremely bored while we're playing through, just mildly bored. Actually, now that I think about it, the quickest my heart started racing was when I was playing one of those stupid mini-games in the arcade. Like, I don't even know why they do these mini-games. I really hate them. I just rather than use that money to write another decent character or something, make a better side quest. I won't say that I'm disappointed by Star Wars Outlaws, because I had no expectations going into this thing. I knew what I was going to expect because this is Ubisoft. I'll get excited when a real studio like Rockstar or CD Projekt Red decides to tackle Star Wars. I want them to and/or Star Wars, but in video game form. I can't wait for that day to happen, if it'll ever happen. You know, Lucasfilm will have to really be willing to give up a bit more control over their IP, which means, again, that's a long shot. So I'd say overall, skip this game if you're not a Star Wars fan and you're a heavy gamer who's just burnt out from all the open world stuff. But if you like the genre, if you like Star Wars and you don't mind a casual experience and are more interested in just being a tourist in the Star Wars galaxy, this is not a bad experience. As for the future, I can see them making like a second one of these things, perhaps making the gameplay elements more hardcore and thought out, but honestly, they need to design a Star Wars game from the ground up that has more hardcore, deeper mechanics at play, deeper fighting, deeper shooting. This is the Star Wars franchise. I wish they would take this seriously instead of try to cash in by just making a more generic open world that just happens to have a very beautifully realized Star Wars backdrop. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss on the rest of our awesome content. We're doing a lot of videos talking about the lore behind this game, including a series about all the various syndicates, just in case you want more information about how they operate and what they're up to. Thanks for listening, guys. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.